The House will come to order. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Representative Goldstein.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
Mr. Shebel, please call the roll.
Representatives Bacon, Barone, Basenecker, Bottoms, Bradfield, Bradley.
Morning.
Representative Bradley is excused. Brooks, Brown, Caldwell, Camacho, Carter, Representative Carter is excused. Clifford, DeGraff, Duran, English, Espinoza, Foray, Flanell, Froelich, Garcia, Sander, Gilchrist, Goldstein, Gonzalez, Hamrick, Hartsook, Representative Hartsook. Oh, he's ducked down. Jackson, Johnson, Joseph, Kelty, Leader, Lindsay, okay. Luck, Lukens, Mabry, Representative Mabry,
Excused.
Marshall, he's there. Martinez, Morrow, McCormick, Wynn, Pascal, Phillips, Richardson, Ricks, Representative Ricks is excused. Rutinel, Ryden, Sirota, Representative Sirota is excused. Slaw, Smith, Soper, Stewart K, Stewart R, she's in the center. Story, Sukla, Taggart, Tatone. Representative Valdez is excused. Velasco, Weinberg, Representative Weinberg. Is excused.
Excused.
Wilford, Winter, Woodrow, Woog, Zokai, Representative Zokai is excused. And Madam Speaker.
With 58 present, 7 excused, we do have a quorum. Representative Goldstein.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure and an honor to serve with you.
Members, thank you. Representative Goldstein, it is a pleasure and an honor to serve with you as well.
All right. I move the Journal of Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Members, you've heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, the motion is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to proceed out of order for consideration of resolutions.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for consideration of resolution. Oops, Madam Majority Leader. I need you to do one more thing.
Okay, Madam Speaker, I'm here.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I move for the immediate consideration of Senate Joint Resolution 4.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed to the immediate consideration of Senate Joint Resolution 4. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 4.
Senate Joint Resolution 4 by Senators Kolker and Simpson, also Representative Clifford, concerning recognizing the week of September 20th through September 26th, 2026 as Frontotemporal Degeneration Awareness Week.
Thank you, Mr. Schiebel. I see Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We just want to have, I request that the summary or the title be read.
Move the joint resolution first, and then request.
Madam Speaker, I move SJR 004.
Thank you. And Mr. Schiebel, we will have you read the resolution at length.
Whereas the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration reports that frontotemporal degeneration, or FTD, is a terminal and incurable neurodegenerative disease affecting the frontal and temporal lobes of the brain. And whereas it is the custom of the General Assembly to recognize official time periods to increase awareness of serious health conditions that affect the lives of Colorado citizens. And whereas in conjunction with the observance of World FTD Awareness Week, Colorado will join many others in recognizing September 20th through September 26, 2026 as Frontotemporal Degeneration Awareness Week. And whereas FTD causes impairments to speech, personality, behavior, and motor skills, which constitute a major public health concern. And whereas it takes an average of 3.6 years from the start of symptoms to get an accurate diagnosis of FTD, with a remaining life expectancy of 7 to 13 years on average after the start of symptoms. And whereas FTD strikes people between the ages of 21 and 80, with the largest percentage of those affected being between 45 and 64, rendering people in their prime of life unable to work or function normally. And whereas FTD imposes additional average annual costs of care impacting those living with the disease, this financial cost is at least 120% the economic burden of Alzheimer's disease. And whereas FTD is named in the National Plan to address Alzheimer's disease as a related dementia and included as a priority in the goals and strategies of the plan to achieve the vision of a nation without Alzheimer's disease and all other forms of dementia. And whereas while FTD is recognized as a related dementia within the Talk About Dementia Awareness campaign spearheaded by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, this resolution serves to establish FTD Awareness Week by supporting the goals laid out in similar statewide initiatives to comprehensively address and acknowledge all forms of dementia. And whereas with FTD comprising an estimated 5 to 15% of all forms of dementia cases, in aggregate, FTD is the most common form of dementia for people under 60 years old. And whereas approximately 40% of people with FTD have a family history of FTD or a closely related condition such as ALS, and roughly half of those people are found to have an inherited form manifested in gene mutations in the progranulin C9 or 72 TAU/MAPT and other rare genes. And whereas FTD is often misdiagnosed as either a psychiatric disorder or a catch-all neurodegenerative disease due to the vast range and diverse combinations of cognitive and behavioral health symptoms, and most cases of FTD are diagnosed in people aged 45 to 65, an age group much younger than all other common forms of dementia that typically affect those over 65. And whereas FTD often negatively changes a person's ability to express emotions and show affection and empathy for loved ones. And whereas in the behavioral variant of FTD, a person's sense of social etiquette and appropriate behavior can be completely lost. It can also result in a distortion of personality so profound that loved ones may feel they are living with a complete stranger. And whereas in the language variants of FTD, in addition to primary progressive aphasia, variants such as somatic variant PPA, non-fluent agrammatic variant PPA, logopenic variant PPA, behavioral variant FTD, and FTD with motor neuron disease, noting the 3 PPA subtypes are distinct, but all are considered part of the language-led spectrum of FTD. And whereas additionally in the language variants of FTD, a person may experience difficulty speaking and understanding grammar, forget the meaning of words, and demonstrate a drastically diminished vocabulary, becoming increasingly hesitant to speak and potentially losing the ability to speak altogether. And whereas in the movement variants of FTD, a person may experience muscle weakness, falling, loss of balance, difficulty making speech, difficulty swallowing, or choking. And whereas a formal globally epidemiology study of FTD is yet to take place. However, the current estimation is believed to be over 60,000 people affected in the United States, which is likely a paltry fraction of the total figure, if accounting for the gap of cases that comprise the initial 4 years of misdiagnosis and underdiagnosis is in aggregate. And whereas the Association of Frontotemporal Degeneration is the leading nation organization exclusively focused on the spectrum of FTD disorders with a mission to improve the quality of life of people affected by FTD and drive research to a cure. And whereas raising greater awareness of the serious disease is imperative and further action is needed to increase engagement and advocacy at the local, state, and national levels. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate of the 75th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, proclaim the week of September 20th through September 26, 2026 as Frontotemporal Degeneration Awareness Week in Colorado.
Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, it's not necessary or customary that we read the entire resolution at length in the second chamber, and that was not my intention today either, and I'm glad that it happened. This particular disease is a young person's Alzheimer's, and it robs a person of their own life and personality right before your very eyes. And while this is still very rare, 60,000 people in the United States does not seem like a lot. This is a massive event for someone's life, usually in what we would consider to be the prime of someone's life. I lost both of my grandmothers to Alzheimer's. I was very thankful that they did that in their late years, in the 80s. This is something that is a big deal for a family, typically while people are still rearing children, typically while people are in, again, the prime of their life, to have to go through massive personality changes and then losing their sense of self and even their knowledge of the people around them. So join me today in making sure that we take a week in September to recognize this in the state of Colorado, and I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 4. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Bradley, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Bradley votes yes. Representatives Brooks and Morrow are excused. Oh, Representative Morrow, $1 fine. Please close the machine. With 60 ayes, 0 no, and 5 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 4 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Members, Representatives Brown, Sirota, and Taggart are excused at such time as necessary today for the Joint Budget Committee. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for House Bill 1110 to be removed from the special orders calendar and placed back on the general orders second reading calendar.
Seeing no objection, House Bill 1110 will be removed from special orders and returned to general orders second reading calendar. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move the following bills be made special orders on March 4th, 2026 at 9:29 a.m. House Bill 1205, House Bill 1145, House Bill 1007, House Bill 1127, and House Bill 1277.
Seeing no objection, the bills listed by the Majority Leader will be made special orders today, March 4th at 9:29 a.m. Representative Wilford. You all have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, Representative Wilford will take the chair.
You're going to start, and I'm going to sit here and watch it.
Yep, you're going to shadow.
Do I stand here or sit down?
What? I'll put it under. Yeah.
Do I stand here or sit down?
Stand. Because that way you can be a part of all of it. I'm a little thrown off because I don't really use the book. I always use this, but we'll use the book. The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bill will be read by title unless there's a request for reading a bill at length. Committee reports are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen on iLegislate and in today's folder on your box account. Bills will be laid over upon the motion of the majority leader, and the coat rule is relaxed. Before we get started, members, it is a little noisy, so I'm going to ask you to take your conversations to the side or off the floor because I don't want to have to be up here banging my gavel. I mean, we can try it. Mr. Sheevel, please read the title of House Bill 1205.
House Bill 1205 by Representatives Velasco and Morrow, concerning changes to state law to reflect the federal expansion of Good Neighbor Authority agreements.
Representative Velasco.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1205 and the Committee Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources report.
To the committee report. Representative Morrow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In committee, we had just a correction amendment adding in wildlife habitat in 2 places. And then we also took out the safety clause and have a petition. And I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The committee report is adopted. To the bill. Representative Velasco.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. This bill is one of the 3 that we passed in the Wildfire Matters Review Committee, this interim, and it's just to align with federal statute around the Good Neighbor Authority and the use of funding from that program to make sure that we are adding recreation projects and opportunities. So, and also the State Forest Department and DNR are very supportive of this bill, so we urge a yes vote.
Representative Morrow.
In Colorado, many of our highest risk landscapes are a patchwork of federal, state, and private lands. That reality requires us to have tools that allow for seamless coordination across ownership lines, and that is why 1205 is important, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1205. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Okay, House Bill 1205 is passed. Mr. Sheevel, please read the title of House Bill 1145.
House Bill 1145 by Representatives Velasco and Phillips, also Senator Cutter, concerning water quality in mobile home parks.
Representative Phillips.
Thank you. I move House Bill 1145 and the Transportation, Housing, Local Government Committee report.
To the committee report. Representative Velasco.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. In the Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee, we added an amendment to define the risk to welfare, and this was in response to our stakeholding with industry to make sure that there was a definition around what that means for residents and for mobile home park owners. So we urge a yes vote on the committee report.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, sponsors, for bringing this bill. It does address an absolutely true problem. During committee, we had some discussion over actions that could be taken or would be taken against owners of parks that didn't maintain quality water. The kind of primary life, health, safety, particulates, et cetera, that CDPHE checks in all water supplies is kind of a given, but this also talks about secondary characteristics like odor and color. The bill itself left that as kind of a subjective standard, but there are EPA objective standards of testing for these secondary characteristics of water, and if we're going to be contemplating fines and taking action against owners, I think it's right that we actually have an objective standard that we're working against. So I do move Amendment L002 to House Bill 1145 and ask that it be properly displayed.
And then you'll say, Amendment L2 is now properly on the Jumbotron. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The operative language we're all familiar with. All caps at the bottom just specifies that the standards to be used will be qualitative, objective, measurable standards as established by the EPA for these secondary characteristics, and I ask for a aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Phillips.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
Members, the CDPHE currently enforces the EPA standards through previous legislation, HB 23-1257. We urge a no vote.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L2. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The noes have it. Amendment L2 is lost. To the committee report, Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Chair. So, I move L004 to the committee report.
And ask that it be properly displayed.
You guys got a copy of this, right? Oh, you didn't?
Amendment L4 has been properly moved and is now displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. All right, so this is just to amend the Transportation Housing Local Government Committee report. And really this just takes it down to the section 2 of this and gets rid of some of these nebulous definitions. Risk to welfare means reasonable likelihood of negatively affecting the ability of individuals to meet basic material needs. Now, how are we going to start getting into these definitions? Because now these definitions, when we put them into law, mean things. So this is just, how do we determine that the quality of water makes them unable to meet basic material needs? There are ways to mitigate. Lots of people use filters. Lots of people use. When I was in New York City, the water came out orange. I suppose that made it, you couldn't drink it without getting a sore throat. Did that affect my material needs? How far does this rabbit hole go when we're talking about material needs? And then when we're talking about finances of a household, well, if you have to get a filter, that would affect your finances. If you have to get bottled water, those are finances. But this is part and parcel. I mean, we're certainly trying to go in these directions, and the water supply, you know, we're trying to always improve it, or should be improving it, if we're going to do this infrastructure, if we're going to create this infrastructure and pipe the water across the city to these locations. So really what this does is it just takes it down a notch and says the risk to welfare means a reasonable likelihood that the finished water or water supply is not of sufficient quality to be suitable for household uses such as drinking, cooking, bathing, washing, and using with home appliances. So really, this covers. I can't think of anything that this doesn't cover in the household without getting into
Just a moment,
nebulous
Representative
definitions.
DeGraff. Just a moment.
Drop the hammer.
I don't want to have to drop the hammer again. Please, Representative DeGraff, proceed.
So, I appreciate the the intent up here. If the water for the household meets the requirements for drinking, cooking, bathing, washing, and using with home appliances, I think that actually covers this up here without getting into, because they have to meet those requirements. You have to meet those requirements. So now you can use it. So rather than putting that in there and creating nebulous definitions, I think that's opening up. Parks property owners to lots of frivolous lawsuits. They're responsible for their part of the water quality, which not of everything that comes. They might not be able. Well, they can't. They can't have any influence on the water that gets from the street into their park, and then from there, then it's distributed. So I think in order to make sure that we're not opening these, just opening up a litigative Pandora's box, I think we ought to just go back to a more simple, basic definition and take out the well-intended but nebulous terminology.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Velasco.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you so much to the representative from El Paso County for offering his amendment. We're going to ask for a no vote, and it's important for us to make sure that we are adding into statute that these issues of water quality are affecting people in their finances when it comes to their household in a negative way, because they have to buy water to drink, and they're not able to drink the water that's coming from their faucet. So we urge a no vote on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L4. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is lost. To the committee report. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The committee report is adopted. To the bill. Representative Velasco.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. This bill is very dear to my heart. I grew up in mobile home parks, and I have experienced some of the issues that we heard people come to testify about, from water that stains your clothes, is bright orange, makes you sick, and gives your baby a rash. It smells like sewage. These are common issues that we see around mobile home parks. We passed a bill my first year that I was here to make sure that there was testing done in all mobile home parks around the state. And some of the findings that we're seeing is arsenic in the water, E. coli, and other contaminants that are detrimental to people's health, but still pass the EPA guidelines. So it's very important for us to make sure that everyone in the state of Colorado has access to clean water and are able to shower, to drink the water that's coming from their faucet, to use it for their appliances. So I'm very proud to bring this with my co-prime to make sure that we're continuing to do that work and that the department has the authority to hold bad actors accountable.
Representative Phillips.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I represent South Thornton. We have over 3,500 mobile homes in our community. That is the most of any house district in the state of Colorado, and it's also in the most concentrated space. We have known about water quality issues in our community for more than a decade. This bill builds on previous legislation addressing the problem for mobile home community residents that do not have safe drinking water, as Rep. Velasco also well explained. This legislation strengthens protections, closes loopholes, and improves the complaint process. It allows CDPHE to test for all the concerns that we have heard for so many years about the brown, stinky water. Most mobile home residents won't even drink that brown water, so they have to buy water, which is a financial burden that they should not have. Poor quality water is a health risk and a financial burden, and mobile home community residents deserve better. This is our opportunity to fix this, and then all of you are invited to come visit my friends in the mobile home communities, and guess what? You'll be able to drink their clean water. Thank you.
Weird say yes vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Chair. And I agree, I mean, with a lot of this, obviously, because, you know, the government in this case has stepped into the arena of delivering water, right? And so that is a competency that I think we need to lean into. Now, I think it's a competency that we need to lean into in the sense that we need to solve these critical issues before we take on additional issues. So if we're having a problem now of delivering this water, then it is something that we need to address. And again, when I lived in New York City, the water was brown, stinky, and gave you a sore throat. You couldn't use it for anything. Well, you still had to wash your clothes in it. Still had to bathe in it. And when I had a well as a child, it would sometimes smell like rotten eggs because that's just sulfur that's in the water. It's not hurting you, it just smells like rotten eggs sometimes. So I am a little bit concerned here because we're talking about a civil penalty issued under subsection 3 as a final agency action. And we don't know, and that puts the bureaucracy at a higher level than the individual. And in the system of justice, we're also, typically, I don't know about the mobile home park owner, if they are just considered to be so flush with cash that they can take on all of these issues. But I do take issue when we say the park owner is not entitled to an administrative hearing to contest and impose civil penalty. And if we go back to see what was struck out, 30-day period for which the violation occurs, the division must impose a civil penalty in accordance with Article 4, Title 24. So I do appreciate that part was struck out, that they must. But I think when we say that the park owner, when you're dealing with that park owner's property, is not even entitled, this is not talking about due process. This is not talking about, because ultimately you're talking about depriving somebody of property if you're talking about fining them. If you're talking about levying a fine against that individual, then that individual should have the opportunity to defend, to clarify, to any number of things. They should at least have the right to that administrative hearing for an administrative finding. So I move L003 to House Bill 1145 and ask that it be properly displayed.
Amendment L3 has been properly moved and is now displayed. You can proceed.
Thank you, Chair. So all this does is restore some semblance of what we consider our proper role in government, into our justice system, right? Because what all this says is substitute that for the park owner is entitled to an administrative hearing, not a judicial hearing, but they're at least entitled to an administrative hearing. If they're going to get an administrative fine from an administrative agency, then they should at least, according to our system of justice, they should be able to at least face their accuser in a like manner. In a court system, you would face your accuser in court, required, and if you're going to have an administrative accusation and an administrative fine, you should be able to address that at least in an administrative setting. To contest the amount or basis of a civil penalty if the park owner requests an administrative hearing pursuant to the section, written within 35 days after the penalty is mailed. Now, and that's pretty generous, I think, after the penalty is mailed, because that actually assumes that the individual is going to receive it, that the park owner has received it. Because what if, because part of this bill is that they're not going to be able to take these fines and fees and all this other stuff, and supposedly somehow magically those fees are not going to be transferred onto the citizens, the residents of that park. And I guarantee you, you have two choices. These costs are going to be distributed onto the residents of the park, or that park will go out of business eventually. When you continue, so the only way for these parks to stay in business is to pass those fees on. Now, depending on where the problem lies, like if you have 100 homes in a park and you have a $20,000 bill for putting in a new trunk line to a certain place, probably more than that, then everybody's going to pay $200 more across an amortized period. And the owner can probably absorb that cost. But an owner might not be able to absorb the cost of $20,000 right off the bat. So now, do we risk the unintended consequences if the owner comes and says, well, I can't raise my rates because you've said I can't raise my rates, and I can't pay for this water line because I can't afford to pay for that water line. So here's my solution. I am now going to sell this mobile home park. Now, is this mobile home park going to remain a mobile home park? Or, in accordance with the massive amounts of the amount of tax benefits to build something called affordable housing, stacked in true Calcutta style, where everybody's packed in on top of each other, because now we can do that where there's no limits to occupancy. Why limit yourself? Why would you limit yourself in an occupancy to 20 units when you could get 100? When you could build a 3-story building and not on that same footprint. So what's going to happen, likely, and I seriously doubt this is the intent of the sponsors, but I'm not sure it's not foreseen by the development community, that those individuals, those mobile home parks, are going to go out of business. And then those mobile home parks are going to be forced to relocate. They're going to be forced to literally take their home someplace else. And it will be bills like this that inadvertently have put them out of business and forced those people to relocate or move into the conveniently provided, transit-oriented Calcutta-style housing. So I think it's important to restore this level of appeal. This is just restoring an administrative appeal to an administrative fee issued by an administrative body. And if we think the administrative body has all of this stuff wrapped up, like they are, we get this idea that the government is infallible. And the government is hardly infallible. The only thing it gets right consistently is doing things wrong. So if we're going to have an administrative fine that's levied on these individuals. They need to be able to respond in kind. This is not asking for a judicial hearing where their due process, because inadvertently they could have their property removed from them by a fine, because they can't go to the left and they can't go to the right. And so what they're going to have to do, I foresee, is that we're going to have an inadvertent sell-off of mobile home parks, and there will be people waiting in the wings to stack more people on top of each other, because you have the water rights that are available there. They can tap into existing infrastructure, and then you can take a piece of property that, I don't know what a mobile home park typically has. The ones that I've been near have been, sometimes 100 units, but you could take 100 units and you could triple that. You could quadruple that. You could make it, and that individual, that developer, can then really maximize their profits, and they will use bills like this to do so. They will use bills like this to instigate lawsuits against these individuals, just to drive them out of business. And I sincerely do not think that's the sponsor's intent. But these type bills will be used to force businesses by lawfare. They will use lawfare to force these properties into distress, where they're forced to sell, where somebody else can profit on there. So let's at least have the administrative oversight. Let's have the administrative appeal so that this does not go off the rails.
Representative Brooks.
Chair, thank you. My colleague brings up a point that is kind of my objection to the bill in general. My issues with the bill in general is that, I don't know what day of the session it is. And it's like, oh, there we go, 50 what? 50 something, 50. We're on 50. Over the past 49 days, I've been able to come away with a distinct impression that affordable housing is of a considerable concern to this body. There have been a lot on affordable housing. So why would we work against those goals and all of the efforts of this body to try to effect a change in the affordable housing space? An amendment like this helps protect that. We're allowing for at least a process, because I don't know if you've taken a look at the fine structure. The fine structure is pretty robust. I mean, talking about, I think, off the top of my head, if I remember from the bill language, is $5,000 for every 30 days or up to $10,000 each instance. So those can accumulate very quickly. If anything, I would tell you that even a $10,000 fine in this economic climate, with the throttling that we give businesses and the regulatory nature that we're also very fond of, that we end up with a space to where a lot of these folks are operating on very fine, very thin margins to begin with anyway. Now, I know generally that's not much of a concern for us, but I think that if we're trying to ensure that we're supplying affordable housing, why would we do something that could then in turn risk the very nature, the very existence of affordable housing? My point is this, that if we don't have a fair system, a hearing system, an appeal system, just to be able to be heard out on these items, we could very well end up with mobile home park owners just saying, no, that's it, I'm out of here. Kind of like other businesses that we see, Palantir, that have left Colorado as well. We see that there is an exodus of business from Colorado. Why would we want to put additional pressure on the very little baby step into affordable home ownership? This works contrary to our goals to be able to affect more affordable housing when we are doing something that could undercut the very existence of affordable housing. Give them a hearing. Give them a chance to be able to be heard. before going straight to a fine system, before going straight to a system that could then send somebody else yet packing and take their affordable housing units, that we're going to then be left scrambling to try to figure out how we're going to replenish that supply. We break things a lot around here. I don't know if y'all have noticed. Man, we're good at breaking things. And we're even better at slapping ourselves on the back and applauding ourselves for coming in with some half-hearted fix. So if you've been paying, I know you've been paying attention. Let's just not even make that a question. I know everybody has been paying attention to the first 49 days of this session. Affordable housing is a recurring theme. It's going to be something that we continue to talk about. I would ask for a yes vote on this amendment so we are protecting the very momentum, vibe, if you will, of this legislative session and what this body is trying to accomplish.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Chair. One thing that I forgot to add in this, because sometimes with these fees and penalties, what's really useful is, depending on the nature of that fee and depending on the amount of that fee would be better spent for the sake of not only the property owner, but the residents who are ultimately going to absorb that price. They will absorb that cost. Most of these places, they're not just raking in money off the backs of these people. They are in a market, they are in a very difficult market, they have very difficult margins, and the only way to survive is to stay in business. So if you have a fine, and then you come to an agreement with the administrative body that is supposed to be serving you to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed, that we have this body that is supposed to be serving the people of Colorado, but instead becomes their master. So we have a bit of an inversion there, but here, when you have these fines, ultimately, if the fine is to force the property owner into a position of repairing the issue, and these can get very expensive very quickly, especially given the amount of, just the trouble in general, right? So, you don't know what the nature of these pipes is underground. I mean, if they are done with asbestos because it's a good natural fiber, then you could run afoul of that, although it'd be best to leave it in situ. But I digress, Madam Chair. So, the point here is that these fines should have the administrative oversight, they have the administrative appeal, because if the owner says, look, I will do this, I will make these repairs, but it would sure be helpful if I could take that fine and instead of giving that fine to the state to waste as it sees fit, it would actually use that money into the purpose of this bill. So an administrative appeal would allow the money of that property, which would ultimately be the money of the property owners, of the mobile park home owners, it would allow that money to go into the repair. And that saves the mobile home park residents money. It could be the part that saves the individual from having to sell off to multi-story, no parking available, Calcutta-style housing that which we seem to be so fond of that we want it to be everywhere. So that is just another advantage of an administrative appeal for an administrative process for a punitive bureaucracy. So again, I ask for an aye vote on this amendment for the sake of not just the mobile home park owners, but for the sake of the mobile home park residents.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L3? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L3. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. Amendment L3 is lost. To the bill. Is there any further discussion? Representative Bottoms.
Thank you, Chair. I do think it's important to note here, and maybe the bill sponsors didn't know this, but I just checked with our resident JBC member again, just to make sure I was right about this. Well, we did this a couple of years ago. We put money into a study to process this information that we're actually dealing with on the bill. The money is being pulled out of that now because after the study was done, it showed that almost all mobile home parks are being sourced, supplied by municipal water. This is the JBC's assessment of this, and so now there's no reason for the money for the study. So how many, a handful of mobile home parks are even affected by this, and then to assume that they're all bad? Guys, this is a waste of time of a bill. This is a waste of paper of a bill. This has already been addressed over the last couple years and found by JBC to be a non-starter. This is not an issue, and we're coming up with a bill to make it an issue, and it looks like to make it an issue to make money or something. I don't know what the point is, but this has already been proven, not by one side or the other, but this has already been proven by nonpartisan staff that this is not an issue. So let's stop doing this stuff with our time and energy in this room.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Brooks.
Chair, thank you. Just a very short amount of time here to reiterate just my concerns that I had expressed during the support of a previous amendment. I do believe we need to take into consideration that the threat of large, and not only large, but large and ongoing fines may end up being particularly punitive to the small operators, small scale operators. Again, that would put us in a position to where this legislative body is saying, we really need to solve for affordable housing, but yet we are going to potentially burden small-scale owners with such large and ongoing punitive structures of fines that we may end up, what's the expression, right? Cutting off our nose to spite our face. We may end up just now creating even more of an issue with the dearth of affordable housing if we're running some of these folks out of town, if we're running them out of business. Because truly, if that's the approach that we're taking with this fine structure, which it is very aggressive over time, the enforcement environment that this creates may very well not even run some of the smaller operators out of town, but then it may discourage future manufactured housing communities. Why would you want to get into a business with a big warning sign? Maybe we should have a label. We love labels. Why would we want to get into a business where there's a giant warning label on it saying, look, if you get into this, your profit margins are going to be very thin and you're going to face very large punitive ongoing fines? We really should have a label for that. It's something that we need to consider because it is working against the very goals that this body is trying to establish. If we could address that, I could get to a yes, but that's something that I just feel is just we're hurting ourselves by not taking into consideration the downstream effects of what it is that we're going to consider passing here. So, with that, just to make sure, I would encourage a no vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Velasco.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. We urge a yes vote.
Representative Phillips.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, this is not a supply issue from municipal water sources. This is within the mobile home community property. And because my cup is half full, 87% of mobile home communities do not have this problem. 13% are being evaluated for water quality issues. My cup is half full because I want to drink clean water. I urge a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1145? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1145 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. House Bill 1145 as amended passes. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1007.
House Bill 1007 by Representative Smith and Stewart R., also Senator Kipp, concerning measures to improve a customer's ability to use distributed energy resources.
Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1007 and the Energy and Environment Committee report.
To the committee report. Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L007 to the Energy and Environment Committee report and ask that it be properly displayed.
The amendment has been properly moved and is now before us. Please proceed. Representative Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a clarifying amendment to language adopted in Committee on Building Codes. We made changes to the bill to ensure that plug-in solar devices are following appropriate codes, but that language was inappropriately tied to the definition of the devices themselves. Instead, we want to ensure that the use of the device follows codes, so this amendment makes this change.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L7? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L7. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Amendment L7 is adopted. Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L008 to the Energy and Environment Committee report and ask that it be properly displayed.
Amendment 8 has been properly moved and is now displayed. Please proceed. Representative Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment comes from our continued conversations with stakeholders, specifically the Apartment Association. The Apartment Association wanted to make clear that property owners would have the ability to protect their property when tenants are installing or using plug-in solar devices. Additionally, they wanted to make clear that tenants could use the devices in their rented spaces only, but not impede on common areas.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Representative Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to commend the sponsors for bringing this amendment to the committee report. I was a no in committee specifically because there were some concerns brought up that dealt with safety. And so speaking with the Apartment Association and some of the things that involve landlords, I think this was a way to mitigate that, to make sure that property is being protected and that landlords and the apartments alike are able to take action on their property. So I appreciate the work. I was a no in committee. I will be a yes for this bill on the floor. So this is a good amendment. Please vote yes.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L8? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L8. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Amendment L8 is adopted. To the committee report. Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Representative DeGraff. Oh, I'm so sorry. Representative Smith and then DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the committee, we did, well, before the committee meeting, we had a lot of stakeholding, and we introduced quite a few amendments, and I'm going to just highlight some of the more important amendments that we had in committee. First of all, it clarifies that the plug-in solar devices are UL labeled and listed to ensure their safety when they are plugged in. Prohibits the use of daisy chaining the portable devices, which is stringing multiple devices together, creating unsafe conditions. Allows for a utility to request a notification of the use of portable solar devices, and clarifies HOAs can put reasonable restrictions on the use of portable devices. Finally, we amended language proposed by IBEW that ensures only licensed electricians can install meter collars.
I would ask for an aye.
I would ask for an aye vote.
Representative DeGraff.
All right. So I think this amendment is actually complementary to what has gone on.
Just for context, Rep. DeGraff, we're talking about the committee, the Energy and Environment Committee report.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not an amendment.
I thought we were on the bill. My bad.
No,
Thank you.
not yet. All right, is there any further discussion on the Energy and Environment Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The committee report is adopted. To the bill. Representative Stewart. Representative Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am pleased to bring before you HB 26107. This bill creates two pathways to increase consumer choice of their source of electricity and to reduce the cost of utility bills through the use of solar panels. The first part of this bill authorizes the use of portable scale solar devices, otherwise known as balcony solar or plug-in solar. These devices are typically 1 to 4 solar panels plus an inverter, which plugs into the standard wall, and they are secured in a yard or on a balcony and can be equipped with a battery. For everyone who can install traditional rooftop solar, this provides an opportunity to generate their own clean energy and save money on their monthly utility bills. Passing this bill also protects the consumer by ensuring these devices are safe for use. Anybody can go online right now on Amazon and buy a plug-in solar device. However, there is no guarantee that these devices are certified, tested, or safe for use. At this time, there is no requirement in Colorado that these devices meet any safety standards. Our bill requires that these products are UL listed and labeled. The bill also requires they have an automatic shutoff when the grid goes down, ensuring the safety of linemen that might be working on the grid. Finally, the bill ensures that plug-in solar devices are accessible by eliminating the requirement to have time-consuming and burdensome interconnection devices or production meters just to use them. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague to talk about meter collars.
Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill is really about increasing energy choice and saving people money on their utilities. We already spoke to, I think, one of the more exciting parts of the bill, which is the balcony solar. But the second part of this bill deals with something called meter collars. Meter collars are an adaptive device that goes on the back of a meter when an electrical upgrade like solar panels and EV charging in your garage, or perhaps battery storage for your solar system to make sure that you can still access your energy that you have created on your own house when the power goes down. Meter collars can save consumers anywhere between $2,000 and $10,000 because it means you don't have to upgrade your entire electrical system and your entire electrical panel. They are also made to shut off the backflow and prevent electricity from going back onto the power lines in the case of a power outage. So they are both a very useful money-saving device, but they're also a safety device. I just want to be clear that the Public Utilities Commission already regulates meter collars. And so most utilities in the state of Colorado ought to be allowing these. We have clarified regulations around who can install these, making sure that they're up to electrical code. But these are a really, really critical piece of saving folks money on their energy and being energy independent in their own homes. All we are asking for is to clarify and ensure that all utilities are allowing the use of these devices because they are safe. We know how they can be installed. They can be installed safely. They're already regulated by the PUC. And so with that, we would ask for an aye vote on this bill.
Representative DeGraff, now is your time to shine.
Thank you, Chair. All right, so a lot of questions answered. I appreciate it. How to backflow into an apartment complex, but I do understand that when the grid goes down, these go off. That's kind of a big limitation of the solar panels in general. But you know, I'm an all of the above kind of guy when it comes down to energy. So it'll be interesting to see how these work. Certainly not opposed. I'm curious how they'll do on balconies, et cetera. Especially if they're going to be up for long times, because ultimately they're not going to be useful when the grid is down. And according to the PUC, that we should get accustomed to the grid going down in their normalization of the PSPS, the public safety shutdowns, power shutdowns. So I move L009 to SHB 1007 and ask that it be displayed.
Representative DeGraff, your amendment is now displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is actually a complementary amendment to the other two that were presented on the committee report, and this just goes to page 6, after line 1, inserting line 7. Nothing in this section limits the ability of a real property owner, landlord, or common interest community to adopt or enforce reasonable content-neutral requirements that are necessary to protect life safety or fire safety, prevent structural damage to real property, or ensure compliance with the general requirements applicable building or electrical codes if the requirements do not effectively prohibit the installation or use of a portable scale solar generation device that meets the requirements set forth in this. So this is just saying that the property owner, as the property owner, should have that they can't just arbitrarily restrict something and say no, right? That's against the intent of this bill. But the property owner does have the responsibility to ensure that they are installed properly if they're going to be put out on, say, a patio. How are they going to be put out on the patio? Are they going to be hung off the rail? Are they going to be a wind hazard? We do have wind here. That's why we have the PSPS. Are they going to be just plugged in and they don't know about it, and then you don't have a collar? So this is just putting the property owner as the property owner, because ultimately somebody who's renting, it's a contract, sure, but they are ultimately a guest of that property owner. And this is just making sure that the landlord, the property owner, is in the loop as to how these are. So somebody doesn't just get one, set it on their deck, and plug it in, which could seriously create a health hazard. If the collars are not on, if there's not, because the collar going on is just going to restrict that building if it's at the meter, if the meter, depending on where the meter is. So if the apartment complex is not on its own meter, then they would be pumping electricity into the entire building, although, you know, it might be at a low level current, but they are going to be, if that grid goes down, they could still be pumping electricity into the apartment complex all the way back to the point of the apartment complex meter. So that's why I think the property owner needs to be involved in this, because I guarantee this bill does not remove the liability on the property owner for somebody doing something like this. And if somebody gets hurt from something like this, either from wind, falling, not installed properly, backfeeding electricity into the apartment complex when it shouldn't be, then the property owner is going to be on the hook, and then this bill is going to be something that they have to go. So this just gets the property owner in the loop, make sure that it does ensure that they can't just arbitrarily restrict it, but that they have to be confident, they know their building, they understand how the electrical works in there. I guarantee most people don't understand how the electricity works in their building. So I think this is a good amendment to protect the residents. It's a good amendment to protect the property owner. So I ask for a yes vote.
Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our colleague for this amendment. At this time, we are going to ask for a no vote, and I will just briefly explain why. I see the intent of this particular amendment, but I will say that we have done pretty extensive stakeholding with owners, property owners, and organizations like the Apartment Association, and the amendment that we just offered, and also several of the amendments that we offered in committee around HOAs actually address all of these concerns. And so, this feels redundant at this point in time, and I would respectfully ask for a no vote.
Representative Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to point out that there are 4 million of these balcony solars installed in Germany, and there has not been a safety issue. My colleague from El Paso County also mentioned meter collars. Meter collars are not going to be installed by somebody that's living in an apartment building. This is somebody's home where they're putting a solar array on their roof. So there was a little bit of a mix-up. So I don't think he meant to talk about meter collars, but just the plug-in solar.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Chair, and I think those are all good reasons. I appreciate it if you'd take a look at it and make sure it's not counter to, but I don't think it is. I think it's actually complementary. Germany has a lot of solar, and of course the promise of solar in Germany has been greatly oversold. I guess the verdict has been entered on the amendment anyways. So we already know what the verdict on the amendment is. It's already been coordinated, but I think it's an important thing to Germany has, they are certainly but when we're talking, just the point that you brought up, that in an apartment complex, people are not going to be installing their own meter collars, and certainly they're also not going to be doing that in a household. The point on the apartment complex is that if you put one of these on your deck, on the patio, on the 4th floor of your apartment complex, and then you plug it into the wall, you will be backflowing into the system. And if you're going to be measuring the amount of electricity to be able to say how much electricity that you are putting back into the system, then electricity is going to be going, well, that's the only way you'd save $2,000 to $10,000 per year, is if you're measuring the amount of electricity that you're putting back into the system. Otherwise, you're just feeding off the grid. You're putting electricity into the grid, but if you're not measuring how much electricity you're putting into the grid, you're not going to get credit for it. So if somebody's plugging that into an apartment complex, I'm just at a bit of a loss as to why you would want to cut the property owner out of it. I understand if it takes a little bit more looking at it, but I think it is something that actually it is intended to protect the residents of the building, protect anybody who might be working on that building. There's a lot of protections in this for the residents of the building, and then also for the property owners of the building. So. Again, I think the intent is to be complementary, not adversarial. But yeah, I think there's some misunderstanding on how the electrons flow.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L009 to the bill. All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no? No. The amendment fails. Back to the bill. Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1007? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1007 as amended. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment or the bill passes. As amended. All right. Mr. Shebo, please read the title to House Bill 261127.
House Bill 1127 by Representatives Rutenell and Joseph, also Senator Roberts, concerning a report after motor vehicle crashes resulting in death.
Representative Rutenell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 261127.
So moved. To the bill.
Members, I am proud, well, actually,
Representative Rutenell.
thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I'm proud to sponsor House Bill 261127 with Representative Joseph. This is a technical bill, but it addresses a very real public safety problem. Our focus is straightforward. This bill fixes an avoidable reporting gap so Colorado can submit complete, consistent, fatal crash data. This bill is about clarity and efficiency. When a crash results in death, CDOT needs toxicology results to report to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Right now, CDOT receives those reports from counties, but the process isn't always consistent and is sometimes even done with inefficient technologies like fax machines. This has resulted in CDOT not being able to submit complete data sets for multiple years, as toxicology results have been missing. That puts our federal compliance and funding at risk, and it means the people designing traffic safety programs are working with an incomplete picture. Like I said, this bill is about better data, stronger compliance, better policy decisions, and safer roads. I respectfully ask for your yes vote.
Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 261127 is about ensuring that Colorado has complete, consistent, and timely information regarding impairment-related traffic fatalities. Accurate toxicology, as you've heard from my co-prime, allows transportation officials and policymakers to identify trends, understand the role of alcohol and drugs in roadway deaths, and craft evidence-based prevention strategies. House Bill 261127 does not create new penalties or mandates on drivers. It strengthens data reporting so that decisions about roadway safety are grounded in reliable information. Better data leads to better policy, stronger prevention efforts, and ultimately safer roads for all Coloradans. And we ask for a yes vote, and it has been a pleasure working with Rep. Rutenell. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none? Seeing none, the question before is the...
There's not a committee report. Representative.
Okay, Representative DeGraff.
I would also like to say it's been a pleasure working with Rep. Rutenell on this bill, but I haven't. So maybe we'll see. All right, so I have a couple amendments here. The first, the sponsor should have received these, but the first is around a potential for an unfunded mandate. So I'm first going to move L002 to House Bill 1127 and ask that it be displayed.
Amendment 002 has been properly displayed. And please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. So this is just going to page 2, amend the printed bill, page 2, line 4, so 1, and then before line 23, insert, nothing in this section requires a coroner to order or pay for new additional toxicology testing that would not otherwise be performed in the ordinary course of the coroner's duties. So what came up was, this obviously, when you just say, well, it doesn't cost the state anything, the state ultimately neglects the fact when it does unfunded mandates that it's pushing the cost of their good intentions down to the citizens of Colorado, to the counties, municipalities, and ultimately to the citizens. So this could become an unfunded mandate. Now, the thing that kind of kept it from being an unfunded mandate when talking to the coroners is that most of this information is stuff that they already do. So it's just taking the data and moving it to a place that they need it to be. So not really much there in terms of an unfunded mandate. But that's if they're already doing it. So if they're not already doing it, then it becomes an unfunded mandate, and this amendment is simply to preclude yet another unfunded mandate, yet another cut in the thousands of unfunded mandates that bleed out the residents and citizens, the municipalities of our state, and just says, if the coroner is not normally going to do this work, then they are not going to do that. Now, if the state wants to subsequently say, all right, then we will, out of the funds that are created with the different transportation funds, that those tests would be funded out of there because this is data that we want. I think that would be a very supportable mechanism, but not to impose something on the coroners that they're already doing. And then simultaneously, if the coroners are already doing it, then we don't need to create a funding mechanism for them to do something that they're already being paid for just to push that back up to the state. So this is kind of a compromise here. So this is just to take the unfunded mandate part off by saying if the coroners are already doing it, all they want is the data. But if the coroners are not doing it, then they're not going to be required to do so. Their municipality, their taxpayers are not going to be required to do so. Because I guarantee that the citizens of Colorado don't really care who's tax-tracting their prosperity. They don't care who's tapping into their pockets, whether it's the municipality or whether it's the state. So this is just eliminating that. If this is a priority for the state, then the state should just go and create a fund for it. But if they're already doing it, there's no sense in having it paid for. So this just steps it back one, and then we can evaluate then the state can actually evaluate whether the data is something that's worth them paying for or whether it's just something they want to have when they're conveniently aligned.
Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank Representative DeGraff for this amendment. However, we ask for no vote on the amendment because this amendment is not being requested by the coroners. We've had multiple months of stakeholding on this particular bill, and this amendment right here is not one of their requests, so we ask for no vote. And we will continue to ask for no vote for the amendment. Thank you.
Representative DeGraff.
Well, I understand that. To the sponsors, I understand that the coroners are not necessarily requesting that because ultimately the coroners are not going to be paying this. So as a representative from House District 22, representative for Colorado, who's tasked with securing the rights of all the citizens of Colorado, those certain self-evident creator-endowed rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and now we're talking about life, liberty, and property being the money. I can guarantee you that as a taxpayer, I am very interested in where this money is going, where it is coming from. So when you put an unfunded mandate, it's easy to say, well, we want all this data because it doesn't cost us anything, but it costs somebody something. So I will speak on behalf of myself, a citizen that would normally, I guess, be in the gallery as a citizen, the supreme part, His Excellency part of our government that is overwatching this floor, not subservient to it, that the citizens of Colorado do not want more taxation. And when this body imposes unfunded mandates, it's continually taxing the citizens. So all this is doing is saying, look, where we're conveniently aligned, we're going to get this data. Where it's not, the state is going to have to actually make a prioritization in the budget, and they're not going to just be able to reach into the citizens' pockets through somebody else. So if this work is already being done, excellent. If this data is already being collected, excellent. Nothing changes. If the data is not being collected, this is just saying, don't. This is just saying don't do it unless it would be normal part of your duties. And then if the state determines that it is a state priority, then the state can prioritize it out of its budget, the state needs to get out of the habit of reaching down into the pockets of the municipalities as a way around the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, as a way around the citizens of Colorado, as a way around the municipalities. So this is just preventing this from becoming yet another unfunded mandate. So if you're confident that this is not going to cost the citizens of Colorado any additional money, which I think is reflected in your fiscal note of 0. So if you're confident that this is actually going to cost the citizens 0, then accept this amendment. If you're not confident that this fiscal note, because one thing the citizens of Colorado need to understand, this is not a prop, this is just what's actually here. The fiscal note, when you look at these fiscal notes that say $0, that's the direct cost to the state. These fiscal notes have absolutely no consideration for the economic impacts. They have no consideration whatsoever for the impacts on the municipalities.
Representative DeGraff, please return to the amendment.
Well, ma'am, I'm talking about the amendment by way of the fiscal note and explaining to the citizens whom this affects ultimately how this process actually works, because the purpose of being at this podium is to actually inform the citizens in the gallery who are above this gallery, not spectators to it, how this process actually works. So I'm explaining to them why I'm concerned about a $0 fiscal note. Because ultimately, the risk here is that this is an unfunded mandate. If it's not an unfunded mandate, accept the amendment, and then we can say that it is actually $0. If you can't accept the amendment, then what you're saying is that this is not a $0 cost to the citizens. It will cost them. We don't know how much. We haven't put that effort into it, but it will cost them. But we just don't want to tell them how much it's going to cost. We're just going to continue to nick away at their prosperity and just keep moving that tax day farther away from mid-April and moving it down closer to Christmas. So this is a good amendment just to make sure this is a good amendment to endorse that this is not an unfunded mandate and to preclude it from becoming an unfunded mandate. So I ask for a yes vote on this. Stop putting unfunded mandates on the citizens of Colorado.
Representative Rutno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, coroners already pay for and engage in these tests in the normal course of their duties, so this amendment is redundant. I ask for a no vote.
Representative DeGraff.
If it is redundant, and I've stated this before, then accept the amendment. If these are tests that are already done in the course of their duties, then this amendment changes nothing. If at some point there's a cost that's incurred from this, from the coroners across the state, then it becomes an unfunded mandate. So I'm not saying it's an unfunded mandate now. I'm just asking for your confirmation that it is not an unfunded mandate by putting in language that the only thing the language does is stop it from becoming an unfunded mandate. And that unfunded mandate could come from, say, another bill in a year that says, or next week after this is signed, or whenever this is signed, afterwards that says, hey, we want for more testing to be done. And we've already set up this process because that is done on a regular basis. The cost is already set by the bill. The cost mechanism is already set up by the bill. Now the state can just keep coming in and adding to it and doing that. So if you want it to be, if you're actually no kidding confident that this is not applicable to the bill, then accept the language, say that this will stop it from becoming an unfunded mandate, that it's not going to become an unfunded mandate next year or the year after that by another litany of good intentions. Stop the unfunded mandate right here with the appropriate language, easy language. If you accept this and it's not an unfunded mandate, nothing changes. So if you tell me it's not an unfunded mandate, but you can't accept the language of this amendment, what you're telling me is that it's actually an unfunded mandate. If not now, it will be an unfunded mandate later. And I think that's an important thing for the citizens of Colorado to understand. So whether it's your intent for it to be an unfunded mandate later, I don't know. I won't speak to intent. Is it somebody else's intent for this to be an unfunded mandate later? I would probably think so. So accept the language, make sure, put a firewall between this being yet another unfunded mandate.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before you is the adoption of Amendment L002. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay? No. The amendment fails. Back to the bill. Representative Richardson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and sponsors. We had a question during committee, and this is just a question. I was wondering if we'd gotten any information since, but as a county commissioner, during COVID, we had several unattended deaths within the county that the coroner responded to, and we had full data on for our public health to work with, but those that passed in the hospital, sometimes we just didn't get those specifics. So the question that I had in committee was, if there's a roadside accident, somebody passes away at the accident scene, the coroner responds, we have that information, but if somebody is evacuated from the site and lingers and later dies within the hospital, does that information really doesn't ever get to our coroner because that death was attended by a physician. And I'm just curious if that data gets rolled into the full picture or not. But thank you.
Representative Rootnell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative, for the question. My understanding is that hospitals retain information for coroners for about 14 days so that they're able to report this through the appropriate channels. I'm not sure if that quite answers your question in terms of someone's death off-site, but there's some retention policy that hospitals have.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Representative DeGraff to the bill.
Thank you, Chair. I was waiting for the part that any further discussion on the bill or what we were talking about. So I move L001 to HB 1127 and ask that it be displayed. While we're waiting for that, I pretty much guarantee that this will become an unfunded mandate at some
Please wait.
point in the
Representative
down the road.
DeGraff, please wait.
I'm not talking to the amendment right yet, ma'am. I'm talking to the bill.
Please wait. All right. Amendment L001 has been moved and properly displayed to the amendment.
I may proceed.
Yes, you may.
L001 to House Bill 1127, and this one is kind of interesting because we've been talking a lot about data. We've been talking about a lot about data and learning a lot about data. Now, and how this data is harvested and how this data is used. And it is absolutely amazing what you get from these data brokers. It's a little bit terrifying. And once that data has left the stable, once the horse has left the stable, then it's a little late to close the door. So what this bill does, if you just go to page 2 after line 22, it's inserting basically a section on the collections and saying add. The report required by this section must not include any personal identifying information about any deceased person and must be limited to information necessary for traffic safety analysis. So this can be done by removing the information. It's a quarterly report, so I mean, if you did this after every single accident, then you would have, then of course you would be it'd be a lot easier to match this up against whatever accident that happened, especially if you live in a town that has 1 or 0 traffic lights, right? Where you have very few traffic accidents, 1 accident, and then you get a report that's public, and then you would understand, so then you would have that information. Because it's not just when you're doing the toxicology that can come out. There's a lot of information that could come out from a toxicology report or whatever they're doing or whatever they're going to do when this bill is, as this bill is added to. Because again, it will become an unfunded mandate if it's not now. So add the report required of this section must not include any personal identifying information, because any personal identifying information would then be a HIPAA violation. So it's important, and if you don't think that I don't have the stats in front of me, we could pull those pretty quickly. The amount of times, the number of times that the state data has been hacked, and then that hacked data is in turn brought back around and used by the data brokers, who are very comfortable buying hacked data. And then our law enforcement is very comfortable buying hacked data that they don't know about and using it. Things that we're learning. So this is just something to protect the privacy, not only of the deceased, if they are deceased in this case, but with any traffic accident. It's protecting the privacy of those individuals. It's protecting the privacy of the family. It's just ensuring that this data, because the data is intended to be used for traffic safety, that it is aggregated. You don't need to know somebody's name, rank, and social security number in order to process that. So what you do, you make sure that is stripped off before it is shipped in a manner that is very likely to be hacked. So, and then thus violating. So what we're doing is we're trying to protect the privacy of citizens, whether they were, just because they were in a traffic accident does not mean they were guilty of something. They were, even if they were the cause of the traffic accident. So there's a lot of things they're not guilty, and they're not guilty until proven so they're innocent until proven guilty. And we need to keep this data sequestered so it does not become something that we have to deal with at a later date. So that's all this is just to get the data, to make sure that the data that is useful for the traffic, and then strip away the stuff before it is shipped, and to preclude it from getting tied up in a compromised situation where we then have to deal with the outcome of having really breached the fiduciary duties of the government in keeping that data private.
Representative Root now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple points here. First off, this bill will make our privacy more protected, because instead of coroners having to submit their information through fax, mail, or email, they'll have a secure platform by which to submit their information. I'll also note that without being able to exchange this personal information, we wouldn't be able to do the appropriate accounting, and we may have double counting in our reporting. So this is an amendment that we ask for a no vote.
Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to note, thank you, Rep. DeGraff, for your amendments. However, this bill has been through a lot of stakeholding process, and we didn't mention that earlier. We work with the Task Force on Drunk and Impaired Driving, which include MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, CSP, Colorado State Patrol, and also CDOT has been part of this conversation. So yes, I understand we're legislators and we can offer suggestions and amendments, but however, our suggestions also have to reflect the work that we do here at the Capitol, which means including doing the stakeholding before we put amendments on other people's bills. Thank you.
Representative Brooks.
Chair, thank you. I am going to take a little bit of a deep breath, shallow deep breath, because I really have problems with what was just said. Our bill's perfect. We did stakeholdering. Granted, it didn't include you, but our bill's perfect. Go away. That's what I just heard. Our bill is above reproach. Go away. You weren't part of this before. You weren't part of the discussion, By the time it gets here to the floor, we've got this thing sealed up, so go away. No. I told myself that I wouldn't react this session in anger. I think I might have missed that mark just now because that was very concerning to me. It was utterly dismissive and rude, and it leaves me with...
Representative Brooks, I totally respect where you're coming from. Let's be careful not to impugn motives or make assumptions about what colleagues did or did not do. If you'd like to speak to the amendment, you are certainly welcome to do so, okay?
Chair, thank you. I feel like it was not in a good spirit of policy collaboration. I'm not saying that it was not. I'm just giving you my 2 cents about how I feel that it was not. Why do we have an amendment process? I think it's an acknowledgement that at times there might be an opportunity to make something better. That should not be viewed as saying that your bill isn't great. We're not saying that your bill isn't awesome. We're saying that there's an opportunity to make your bill a little bit better. The dismissiveness of that process is of great concern to me. It ought to be of great concern to everybody
Representative
here.
Brooks, I would like you to stick to discussing the amendment. And if you want to discuss the process, please do so at a later date.
It's a good amendment. This is a reasonable amendment. I understand that there are times where it might be seen that an amendment is trying to neuter, eviscerate, nuke, poison pill a bill. I get that. This amendment does not do that. Rejection of this amendment makes me wonder, what is it that the policy is trying to do? Are we trying to data cultivate? Because this amendment, it's not striking language. This amendment adds language that I believe ought to be considered. When the amendment is stricken down and just dismissed because it wasn't part of the original stakeholdering process, that is a travesty to any policy process. This amendment deserves to be heard and not just swept away for either reasons that I can only assume are from the amendment sponsor or the fact that it came from this side. Anything that comes from this side, you know what, we've got the yes, we're just going to move through this, let's just and move on. It's unfair, it's unjust, it's wrong. And basically to say those words at this well is startling to me. It ought to be startling to anybody that's paying attention. Yeah, I got a little angry. Because I'm appalled. This is a good amendment, it's a fair amendment, it makes sense. It shouldn't just be rejected and dismissed in the manner that it just was. We have a process here. We're supposed to work within that process. It is an amendment, for crying out loud. We try to make policy better. If we're not trying to make policy better, what are we doing? I would encourage to reconsider the direction that you were just given. To say, let's just say no to this. I would ask you to reconsider. And I would ask you to accept an amendment, even though, oh, goodness gracious, it occurred outside of our robust stakeholder process that you were not part of nor invited to. I would ask that you vote yes for this amendment.
Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. I'm very surprised by the outrage. And sometimes in this room, I wonder if the message, depending on who it comes from, bring outrage. I did not say anything that I believe deserve any kind of outrage. What I said, I'm happy to repeat what I said. I said our bill has been stake-held with several organizations, including MAD, the Colorado State Patrols, and CDOT. And also the bill came from a task force. And prior to adding an amendment to someone's bill, I just found out this amendment before actually I got to the well to present the bill. And before you do that, please have a conversation with the stakeholders. And if you find that to be rude, that's very sad to me, and that's concerning to me as well. So I just wanted to note that. And also, too, I just wanted to note, we need the personally identifying information. The reason why, it's because it's necessary per federal law.
We're going to stand in a brief recess.
The committee will come back to order. Representative Sukla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So last week on 9 News, anybody can look it up on their phone, state collects millions by selling driver's data to private investigators, data brokers. Anybody can look it up. It's already happened, and that's why this is a good amendment, and that's why it needs to pass.
Representative DeGraff. Representative Locke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the prior speaker pointed out history from last week, but I would like to point out history from earlier this week in this building, where a colleague of ours put forth an amendment on the election law and was told that information that's already publicly available would be at risk of being shared with bad actors if shared with private third party. And the vast majority of this body voted on the stated grounds of privacy in order to protect information that is already public. In the same way, I would think that this body would want to protect information that is not public. And so I'm hopeful that all of those who voted in favor of privacy a couple of days ago will vote in favor of an even greater level of privacy today. As such, I rise in support of this amendment.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Chair. This has been a morning. So let's dig into some of it, because some of this is important, because I did provide. As soon as I had that amendment created, I sent it this morning. As soon as it was created, and I had a copy of it, I passed it over to the majority. I don't know what happened after it went to the majority. So now, as far as waiting till this morning, perhaps the citizens of Colorado, whom we're supposed to represent, who would be stakeholders in the process beyond MAD, CSP, the coroners, and CDOT. And I happen to represent, well, I think I represent all of those stakeholders in this process, specifically those ones from House District 22. But our job is to represent all Coloradans. And the only ones I see there is Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Representative DeGraff, please stick to the amendment. We can talk about process at another time.
Okay. So the 781 bills preclude some of the niceties of good governance. Now, when we're talking about data, we just learned that the state effectively publishes your data. Now, once that data is published, now, if you look at it in light of the House Bill 26-1037 that we presented last week, that bill gets into what law enforcement, what the government can do, what
Representative
data
DeGraff,
the government.
please return to the amendment.
Ma'am, I'm talking about the data, the background behind this amendment, because this is ultimately about protecting the privacy rights of citizens. Because what we just learned is that the state cannot be trusted with your data. You give the state data, we would expect them to have some level of fiduciary duty about it. If not, maybe some bail or bailee relationship with it, where that data is allowed to be used by them for the purposes that they need to use the data. But for the state to sell the data, because the law enforcement does not need the state to sell the data in order to access that data. That is a given. The state can access all of the data that the state collects. What we just learned is that the state publishes that data for use in commercial operations. And now what we're looking at is we're talking about taking toxicology reports. We're talking about taking personal health information and giving it to the largest data brokers there are, and that is now the state of Colorado. Because the state of Colorado, we have just learned, is the source of much of this data. Probably the most useful demographic data being sold on the open market for a profit for the state that cannot handle its finances, cannot handle its processes, and so this is a good amendment because if the state cannot be trusted with normal data, and what kind of data are we talking about? Where is our nexus with data collection? Well, you have your housing information, you have where you live, you have your voter identification, you have your DMV information. And if they're finding out that the state is selling that, now we're going to say, well, sure, the state's making turning a healthy profit on that. Is that in our budget? Where does that show up in our budget? Maybe the JBC should be, we should find out from the JBC, because if the state is selling data, it should be something that is coming back around into the general fund. And we should have known that a long time ago. Now, if that data is being sold and that money is not going back into the general fund, then I think we have a bigger problem. Because I have probably a pretty good idea where that money's going if it's not going into the general fund. But Madam Chair, we're talking about the amendment. And that is, we're talking about data that is linked to a traffic report, that is linked to a traffic incident. And so now you are looking at it, you're taking different data. You're taking basically HIPAA data, you're tying it to a tragic event of which we don't know the cause, and then you're basically putting that data, which is ultimately going to be used, is possibly going to be used for a trial to determine the cause, and you're putting that data in the public marketplace and tainting it in advance because the state is selling your data. The absolute lack of outrage is amazing. The state is selling your data, the state is buying your data, the state has what is called patterns of life on each and every one of you. Most would consider it a violation of the Fourth Amendment. This is just trying to put some guardrails around this in making sure that personal identifying information that is attached to a toxicology report, that is tied to a coroner's report, that is tied to a traffic accident, is not, at this point, sold on the open market. So a bill at this point about the government collecting data has now become a bill about collecting data for the government to sell. So whether the sponsors had that intent or not, I'd say until we know definitively that is not the case, this bill is about collecting data from which the state will profit, or some politicians will profit. Because I kind of doubt that there's a legal pathway for that money to come back into the general fund. So I'm very interested to learn how the state was selling data. If anybody wants to look at House Bill 1037, I would recommend doing so. Your data is not only for sale, it's for purchase. It's being used against you, and this bill adds to it. So vote yes on this amendment. Keep some level of HIPAA privacy in there because the state cannot be trusted with your data. I asked for a yes vote on this amendment, and I asked for a review on the process, because what we've been told this morning is that this process here, which is the only time that the citizens in the state actually really have any input or observation into this process. We've been told this morning that this process is perfunctory. The process is perfunctory. It has no value except for window dressing. And the stakeholders that I represent don't necessarily fall in line with MAD, CSP, coroners, or CDOT. The stakeholders that matter in this conversation are the citizens of Colorado. The citizens of Colorado matter in this conversation. I don't know what the motivations behind MAD are, but I guarantee it's not data privacy. I asked for a yes vote on this amendment. We need to get this state reined in. We need to figure out who's selling the data, where that money is going, and what's being done with that data. Because what we've learned this morning is that the processes of the state are completely broken.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm rising again in light of some conversations I've had off the floor in hopes that some information will be made available before we have opportunity to vote on this. I do want to put on the record my agreement with the fact that the amendment process is an important process to keep, and when we are looking at over 371 pending bills or more, the process happens in real time, and we have to put forth amendments in real time. This particular amendment, there are some factual questions that I think would be helpful to inform the conversation. Really, there are two pieces to this amendment. The first piece is as relates to the personally identifiable information, and questions on that are, what is the information that is being shared? What specifically is the coroner actually sending in? And to who, and where is that being stored, and how detailed is that information? If we had the answer to that set of questions, it may dissolve some of the concern related to the sharing of data. But since we don't seem to have that information, then it raises issues of what is being shared to whom, and how much is that information then available to people to use in whatever different ways, including the sale of. The second piece of this amendment, as I see it, is a narrowing of what information can be used to only those items that actually impact upon traffic safety analysis. Now, that narrowing would be something that that is important to consider, because the question would really revolve around the why of this overarching policy and whether or not that particular narrowing would undermine the policy, and if it does undermine it, whether that's something this body is supportive of. And so I will leave those questions on the table in hopes of having further discussion.
Representative Espinoza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm rising because I had similar questions about where this bill was coming from, what the issues were, and I did reach out to the good liaison from the Department of Transportation to ask some of the questions that were just asked. And I want to put on the record that the data that we're talking about in the current bill is data that has been required but has been being reported on a quarterly basis. It also previously, the part that was stricken, which was my concern when I looked at the bill, included data that apparently is obsolete or was never in the hands or possession of the coroner. And so that's been stricken. What is important to understand is this is not new data. This is data that's required for the NHTSA report that we have to send to the federal government. There was a reporting requirement to DOR, which had nothing to do with that NHTSA report. So the intent of this bill, and therefore the unnecessary need for this amendment, is that the bill is going to provide the coroners the obligation to make this reporting electronically and on a quarterly basis instead of on a monthly basis, which they were not complying with. So this was in large part to deal with eliminating things that the coroners didn't have access to and ensuring that the coroners would report the same information but on a regular basis and electronically, which actually reduces the cost for the coroners because they don't have to transmit it in other locations. And just for example, the things that were stricken from the bill were circumstances of the crash or other information that belongs to CDOT or to the police rather than to the coroners. So I would say this amendment is unnecessary because this data is nothing different than what has been collected, what we've been already collecting, and the only issue is ensuring that the reporting is to the right department, so we're not actually adding an additional department that doesn't need the information to the exact point of this amendment, which is we want to limit the circumstances of who can obtain this data. So I would suggest that this amendment is unnecessary and support a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Rootnell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L003 as a substitute amendment to L001 and ask that it be properly displayed.
Amendment L003 has been moved and properly displayed.
Thank you. We've got one.
Now it has been properly displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I stated in my previous remarks to the prior amendment, we have requirements that we need to meet for the federal law that NHTSA requires. And so what this amendment will do is to clarify that the report required by this section must include only the personal identifying information about a deceased person that is necessary to meet federal reporting requirements, which is the law. I ask for your aye vote, and I thank folks for their discussion today.
Representative DeGraff.
Now I can join the co-sponsor and say I really enjoyed working with Rep. Rootnell on this bill. So I do support this amendment. If there is any data that's an issue, then it would, if it's federally required, yes. If it's not federally required, then it is not going to be an issue. So I think I appreciate the the alternate to make sure that both sides are covered.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to rise and say I support this amendment and I'm also grateful for it. And to anyone who may ever find themselves in federal office taking up any sort of data issues that would put our people at risk in terms of data breaches, I hope that those conversations will be had.
Representative Brooks.
Chair, thank you. And thank you for the time that you put in, the thought. Saw you over there at the drafter's desk. Wasn't exactly sure at the time what it was that was being worked on there, but I do appreciate bringing this and the attempt to kind of walk towards the middle a little bit and kind of find a space within which to collaboratively work. So thank you, and yeah, I'd be happy to support this.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L003. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment passes. To the bill. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Bill 1127 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The bill 1127 as amended has passed. Mr. Shebold.
Okay.
Please read House Bill 12, the title to House Bill 1277.
House Bill 1277 by Representatives Bradfield and Leader, also Senator Doherty, concerning the continuation of the Kidney Disease Prevention and Education Task Force and in connection therewith implementing the recommendation of the Department of Regulatory Agencies and the Department's 2025 Sunset Report to sunset the task force.
Representative Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 261277. I am here to present the Kidney Disease Prevention and Education Task Force sunset as scheduled September 1st, 2026.
To the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, first, I want to thank all my colleagues who stood with me and did not sunset the Kidney Task Force early when it was requested. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for that. And also to the task force, they thank you as well. And I also want to thank my co-prime for being with me on this, as she was part of the original task force. So I want to thank her for that. Additionally, I want to thank Becky Diorio, Terry Richardson, Matt Dietz, Lisa Bentley, Kelly Struthers, a special thank you for her, Allie Walker, Abby Collins, Brian with Next Step, Jeff Blumenfeld, John Gutowski.
Thank you, Representative Leader. To the bill.
And thank you to Dr. Seth Levy, a very special thank you to him. So I want to thank them for their unwavering service and commitment to this important work. And additionally, I want to extend my sincere thank you to Senator Dylan Roberts for his partnership as he recently joined. With that, I will pass it to Representative Bradfield.
Representative Bradfield.
Thank you. The task force was established in 2021 through House Bill 211171, and I was so pleased to be a part of that. And it was to work with lawmakers, healthcare entities, with the purpose to increase kidney disease awareness. And they've done a great job. And the task force was only to exist for 4 years, and it did, and they were just not quite through with the work, and I'm very appreciative of their of this body giving them another couple of years. What they have been able to do is they've developed and implemented outreach strategies in partnership with the National Kidney Foundation, including direct outreach to Colorado primary care providers to increase screening awareness. And they've worked to promote health equity and transplants access. A lot of things were done, and in such a positive way.
Representative Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the task force final report will be released in August of 2026 of the completing their work as mandated. The National Kidney Foundation will continue the public awareness campaign initiatives developed by the task force and through our legislative efforts with House Bill 261019 to ensure testing is a part of your annual screening. Could be screening if you find out you have kidney disease. This sunset aligns with the DORA's October 2025 recommendations in their advisory committee sunset review. And I ask for an aye vote on the sunset of the committee. We have completed our mission.
Representative Bradfield.
Thank you. I too ask for an aye vote on this sunset. Thank you.
Just a general reminder that we do not mention specific names unless they are elected officials or family members from the well. Representative DeGraff.
I'd just like to say I appreciate this and proving Ronald Reagan wrong, and he was an elected official, in that there's nothing so permanent as a temporary government program. So it's always good to see that a temporary government program can actually go away, and you get to prove Ronald Reagan wrong. So I think that's a win for you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before you is the passage of House Bill 1277. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay. You have passed House Bill 1277. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
You have heard the motion to rise and report.
The House will come back to order. Mr. Schiebel, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Madam Speaker, your Committee of the Whole begs leave to report as under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof and making the following recommendations thereon. House Bills 1007 as amended, 1127 as amended, 1145 as amended, 1205 as amended, and 1277 passed on second reading, ordered, engrossed, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Representative Goldstein. Members, you have heard the motion. There are no amendments at the desk. The motion before us is the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Morrow, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Morrow votes yes. Representative Bradley, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Bradley votes no. Representative Lindsay is excused. Please close the machine. With 37 aye, 20 no, and 8 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Members, that leaves us to announcements and introductions. I will start us out. Representative Woodrow will replace Representative Mabry on House Judiciary for today only. Representative Ferre will replace Representative Mabry on House Business Affairs and Labor for today only. Representative Ricks.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Business Affairs and Labor will be meeting in room 112 today at 15 minutes upon adjournment. We're going to be hearing 3 bills, House Bill 26-1228, 26-1258, and also House Bill HB 1245. See you there.
Thank you. Representative Tatone.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Tomorrow morning, members, 8 o'clock in the morning, JTC is going to meet over in 352, and we're going to have a conversation with the Judicial Department and OIT. So if you want to nerd out, come at 8 o'clock.
Representative Lukens.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Education Committee will be meeting 10 minutes upon adjournment in room 107. We will hear House Bill 1093 and House Bill 1193.
Thank you. Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee will meet in LSBA at 1:30, hopefully. If not, we'll let you know if it's a little bit later for House Bill 1125 and Senate Bill 1.
Thank you. Representative Gilchrist.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Health and Human Services Committee will meet at 1:30 today in room 112 to hear in this order House Bill 1147, the Sunset Review of the Division of Professions and Occupations, 1195, 1139, 1227, and Senate Bill 007. We'll see you there.
Thank you, Representative Gilchrist. Representative Smith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have permission to be absent this afternoon, and I'm paying my dollar from last time when I did not sign up.
Thank you. Representative Smith, you are a role model for this body. Thank you. Yes, applause. Assistant Minority Leader Winter, thank you for leading that celebration. Representative Ryden.
Thank you, Speaker. Today is Mental Health Colorado's 32nd Annual Legislative Education and Advocacy Day. These advocates are here from across the state. They're here to meet with you to champion policy solutions that promote healthier minds across the lifespan for all of Colorado. And so please meet with them, hear what they have to say, and hopefully that will inform how you view some of our mental health and behavioral health bills that are coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Story.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, the CDC Capital Development Committee will meet tomorrow morning in room 352, Senate Committee room 352 at 8:20.
Thank you. Representative Speaker Pro Tem Basenecker. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
Members, they have all left us to go build houses, but earlier this morning, staff and volunteers from Habitat for Humanity were at the Capitol advocating for affordable home ownership. Thank you to everybody who said hello to them. 23 Habitat affiliates are building for-sale housing in 45 Colorado communities, and they're, of course, proud to be a part of the housing solution. One thing about that solution is that they've been partnering with the state through housing grants, and in the last 2 years, they've received funding for over 300 affordable for-sale units. That means individuals working in healthcare, retail, education, manufacturing, and local government, the people that keep our communities thriving, they're able to establish roots in the communities they work and love. Just to share one quote from a Habitat homeowner, "We were worried that we would have to leave Colorado due to the cost of housing and rent. We now take pride in owning a home, building equity, and having a secure future. This is a huge stress taken out of our day-to-day lives." I'm not sure that any of them are still here, but please do join me in welcoming Habitat to the Capitol today.
Representative Espinoza and company.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today first to welcome House District 4 to the Capitol. They've stuck with us all morning and got to observe the issues. So welcome House District 4. I also just want to take a moment because we lost a major leader in our House District 4 last week. So last week, the spouse of Leah Dean, who was the former vice chair of the Denver Democratic Party, passed away. Cassidy Dean. Cassidy was an active Denver Democrat, a dedicated precinct organizer in HD4. He was also the head of our rules committee, or on our rules committee. He was always ready to lend a hand, whether he was flipping a burger at a picnic, or helping paint offices, or walking the neighborhood and doing his precinct work. Cassidy and his partner, Leah, have been stalwart members of the House District 4 community. And a great loss to many people in the Denver delegation who are facing with the loss of Cassidy. He had a valiant fight against colon cancer. And one of the things that Leah has asked us to consider is to remind our constituents of the value of early detection of colon cancer in Cassidy's memory. So I wanted to announce that I have had the Colorado flag flown today over the Capitol to remember Cassidy, and that will be given to Leah as well. I have a card on my desk if any members of the legislature would like to sign it to send to Leah in recognition of this sad time and loss. But wanted to welcome HD4 and acknowledge an HD4 member. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Woodrow.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
Members, the Judiciary Committee will ostensibly be meeting at 1:30 p.m. in room 107 to hear House Bill 1060 for action only, House Bill 1185, Senate Bill 12, and Senate Bill 13. Please keep track of your messaging. It might need to be pushed back given morning committees. Otherwise, 1:30 p.m. and 107. Thank you.
Thank you. AML Bacon? Assistant Minority Leader Caldwell. Oh, sorry. Minority Leader, Mr. Minority Leader Caldwell. Sorry,
That's all right.
I had assistant on my brain.
It's all right. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I request a moment of personal privilege.
So approved.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this moment of personal privilege. Members, I rise today not to spend time debunking or offering differing perspectives on statements made during moments of personal privilege over the last few days. In fact, that'd be hypocritical to the very point I'm here to make. I want to address what I and my caucus view as a repeated misuse of personal privilege from this podium. House Rule 22 of the Colorado House Legislative Rules that were voted on by us outlines the use of personal privilege. It states that members may take personal privilege to speak on matters that, quote, may collectively affect the House, its rights, its dignity, and the integrity of its proceedings, or the rights, reputation, and conduct of its individual members in their respective capacities only. We've seen examples of the proper use of personal privilege that fall within the scope of Rule 22 during this 75th General Assembly. During special session, when a member of the majority seemed to question the minority caucus's motivation for speaking long on a bill, that questioned the, quote, rights, reputation, and conduct of its individual members in their respective capacities. To the credit of the majority leadership, our assistant minority leader was granted a moment of personal privilege to respond accordingly on behalf of our caucus. The institution is important, and these rules exist to protect it. If abided by, these rules preserve decorum within this chamber and maintain integrity in our proceedings. The rules are clear. A point of personal privilege is not meant to grandstand policy or advance a political agenda. Yet, this is now the third time we have seen points of personal privilege used to advance policy arguments. If we're not following Rule 22, will we apply these points of personal privilege fairly? If a small business in my district closes down, will you grant me personal privilege to criticize this body for the regulation that I believe broke the back of that business? If a constituent of mine is harmed in a crime while waiting on a 3-day background check, will you grant me personal privilege to lay blame at your feet? If anyone in this chamber wants to make their positions known on the happenings in Minnesota, ICE operations in Colorado, or disagreements with foreign policy, you are free to post on social media, publish an op-ed, send a press release, and hold a town hall. Or you have the ability to run a resolution, at which time opposing views and differing opinions can be heard from the floor. The credibility of this institution relies on traditions, precedents, and following the very rules we vote on ourselves. The precedent we're setting in the first 50 days of the 2026 session is that points of personal privilege are a substitute for personal grievances intertwined with political messaging. As a body, we have all made a commitment to decorum in this chamber. And if we want this institution to retain credibility, then we must enforce and respect the rules voted on by us that govern it. Thank you.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar till Thursday, March 5th, 2026.
Seeing no objection, the balance of the calendar will be laid over until tomorrow, March 5th. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until later today.
The House will stand in recess until later today.